special conference meeting of the Board of Commissioners. I'm going to start this by calling the roll call of all commissioners, and it'll be in the order of your town. If you would speak up, this is recorded so that we can have this for the record. Duncan Galbraith. Duncan. Lee Perry.
Here.
Abby Folk. Abby. Tim Moran.
Here.
Alan Nye.
Here.
Doug Taft.
Here.
Leslie Nolte.
Here.
Logan Haig.
Present and accounted for.
Logan.
I'm here.
Okay. Tim Laux.
I'm here.
Paul Stabler.
Here.
Paul Roos.
Paul Roos is here.
Michelle Devia is here. Jeremy Hussey. Jeremy. Bryn Oakleaf.
Here.
Okay. Before we start, I want to explain how we're going to go about this. It appears that there is a public on this call, which is a good thing. But to keep order with this, now that I've called the roll, after the consent agenda, Sarah is going to be given a comprehensive COVID-19 update on how it's impacted CSWD, the changes that have been necessary to our functions and operations. I'd like the commissioners to let her finish talking uninterrupted so that she can get through all of the points that she wants to make. Once she's done that, I'm going to go through the roll call once again and give everybody an opportunity to make any comments, to ask Sarah any questions, and you can have a dialogue with her when you're done. And please keep it to a reasonable length of time. We'll move on to the next commissioner in the list. Once we've gone through one round, I will start again. And if anybody has a follow-up question or what they heard has triggered something else, you can then make another comment then. Once you're all comfortable with having spoken and gotten, the information you need, then we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. So I'm going to start this by asking if there are any amendments to be made to the agenda itself. Hearing none, I'd like, without objection, the consent agenda is approved. Hearing no objection, the consent agenda is approved. Now I want to turn this over to Sarah so that she can do her district update on the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on it. Go ahead, Sarah.
Great. Thank you very much. And to eliminate background noise, I am going to put everyone back on mute. Works. Very good. Okay, so I should still be on there. So again, thank you everyone for attending. And this has been a very long, probably the longest month and a half that I think I've experienced and that anyone here has experienced. And the first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I give a lot of thanks to the entire CSWD team um, all 50 plus of us. Because if we've learned anything from the past several weeks, it is that we are one team, and we are all working together for the benefit of the district, for our customers, but also for the highest purpose of staying safe. Um, and everything that we have done has been to those aims, and to make sure that everyone is indeed staying safe. So the memo that I sent out was designed to provide some level of detail, not all of the details. So I want to fill in some of the blanks, perhaps that there may be, that you may be wondering about. And there's been so much back and forth, things that have changed daily, sometimes changing hourly. So going back to when we first started having the conversations internally, that was back in February. And so in February, we just very briefly touched on this potential emerging situation, not knowing really what it was. And then within a week, we had a much better idea. And it was between February 26th and March 4th that Michelle Devia had also said that she felt that we needed to be bringing an update on how we would be maintaining business through a potential epidemic at that point. And it wasn't even a pandemic. It was something that, we hadn't fully appreciated the depth and the scope of. So I started talking to the team about a business continuity plan, and it really was focused on those areas that I outlined in the memo. How are we going to continue to maintain our services across our system, and answering certain questions, right? So making sure that we were understanding the CDC guidance, that we were had a good handle on our minimum staffing needs for all facilities, identifying some of those gaps. We wanted to make sure that we were truly being considered essential employees. And what does that mean when it comes to the state? What does that mean when it comes to the feds? So we were looking for some clarity there. It was critical that we reach out to our vendors and our partners to understand what their continuity plans were, particularly with Casella regarding MRF staffing, materials movement, the landfill, the transfer station. Reaching out to obviously the state and understanding what the regulatory requirements would be, statutory requirements. And then we had some very basic business needs that we needed to make sure that we were taken care of, and particularly around our information systems and our IT network. And last but not least, we wanted to make sure that what was the plan for the board to be able to meet to make decisions. So we very quickly started working on that continuity plan, and each program was tasked with identifying not just a plan for operations, but what are their critical vulnerabilities. And staffing really rose to the top. And part of that is because in many of our functions, there is one person, maybe 1.5 people, who can perform a critical function, such as payroll, such as HR, IT. We have, very few people who are cross-trained in some of these critical business areas. So we recognize that there are some gaps there. We also recognized in the area of materials movement was also a critical area where we needed to make sure that we had backup. And that is with our roll-off drivers. So to make sure that we could continue to properly support all of our systems, all of our functions under the same parameters, we recognize that, and we've known this for a while, and we're not the only ones, excuse me, where there's been a shortage of CDL drivers. So we've long recognized this as a particular vulnerability. So from there, that was in the week, between March 6th and for the next week or so. So in there, we did some research on how to fill those gaps, where we could improve our systems. John Dorwart, our IT director, has spent unbelievable amounts of time shoring us up and supplementing to make sure that we could continue to operate. And we reached out again to Casella and to talk with them about their contingency plans too. So we were still at that point, this is March 10th, 12th, still operating all facilities, still in the admin building. And then on the 13th is when Governor Scott issued Addendum 6 to his Executive Order 01-20, stay at home, stay safe. So in that week where we had identified the vulnerabilities for our continuity plan, Josh Esty put together an operations contingencies worksheet. And that's where each department listed the items that they needed to basically to ensure workflow. So every department would fill that in and continue to update that. And that became a critical exercise as we very quickly realized that we were going to need to be working from home for the admin office. And the admin office was working from home first. As any of you who have been to our admin office know, it would be an incubator for all kinds of nasty things, nasty bugs. So because the other facilities could mostly work outside or in the open air, that was the reason that we implemented the work from home for the admin, because that work could be done remotely, almost nearly all of it. And there are a few pieces that could not be done remotely, and we have implemented a staggered office schedule where only one person is in the office at any one time. And again, throughout all of the communications that we send out to our staff include CDC guidelines, and they are updated accordingly as well. So in that time between, again, March 4th and then March 16th, when admin was work from home, we were continuing to identify critical functions and then shoring up and cross-training when at all possible remotely. One of the areas that we were identifying as well was, again, because of our vulnerability with trucking, we very quickly, again, between March 13th and March 19th, we're realizing we needed to get down to the basics at our drop-off centers and start asking residents and customers to really restrict their access to us to essential visits. It was in line with the governor's stay home, stay safe message. And we were reiterating that with basic 3 is what we called it, right? So trash, recyclables, and organics. And the organics at that time was also including leaf and yard. So food scraps and leaf and yard waste. And we wanted to get across the message to our public that a lot of what they were generating as far as waste can wait to be brought to the transfer station or brought to the drop-off centers. And that was, in order to help to relieve some of the pressure on our roll-off drivers and on our outside vendors that we also relied on to move materials back and forth among the drop-off centers and back and forth to transfer station or to other vendors. And we really needed the public to comply with that, because we knew that it would be, if we lost our roll-off drivers, then we would not be able to maintain our materials movement. So we began messaging the basic 3. We also looked at, not just the basic 3 as far as that was our tier 1 material that we wanted to make sure that, again, by regulation, we had to maintain, because our facilities are considered certified transfer stations. So if we're taking trash, we must take recyclables and food scraps and leaf and yard. And then the other materials that we looked at as well, how could we maintain those materials that generated revenue? And then taking a look at the materials that we subsidized and that we relied on other vendors to collect or to move for us, transport for us. And those were the first layer of materials that we deemed were not necessary, not essential, that they be disposed of immediately. If you've got a broken chair that's been in the basement for 5 years, more likely it can wait for another 5 weeks. It doesn't have to be gotten rid of right away. It was those kinds of things that was part of our criteria. So, and again, with some of those bulkier items, generally what our operators at the drop-off centers would do would be to assist customers. And by telling our folks that we needed to strictly adhere to social distancing, physical distancing protocols, being able to assist taking something out of someone's truck or trunk, or to help them lift it into a container or roll off, that was no longer going to be the case, and we would not be able to offer that service. Our drop-off centers have always been do-it-yourself, but our operators are helpful, and they like to make sure that people don't hurt themselves and that they get items into the right containers. And again, we just want to be helpful. And we quickly determined that that was not going to be conducive to social distancing. So those were the items as well, part of the criteria that we said, no, we need to ratchet back to just the items that can be safely disposed of as do-it-yourself. Again, trash, recycling, food scraps, and leaf and yard. So as part of, again, the protocols implemented at the drop-off centers and at any of our public-facing facilities, so social distancing immediate wearing of nitrile gloves due to the handling of cash, and making sure that there was limited interaction with the public. Cash was a big deal. As you know, we've long been trying to figure out the credit card situation, and for a variety of reasons, hadn't been able to implement. Heinsberg was going to be our first drop-off center that we were going to have credit cards, debit cards be available at, and the Heinsberg location is on hold as well, obviously. But so that was going to be our test case, and I have to say we're learning a lot about what we can do for cashless services, but we were not able to get that in place in time for the pandemic, basically. So cash was an issue. Making change was an issue, and we realized that we needed to again reduce our employees' access to potential sources of contaminants. So part of that also was eliminating, again, any hand-to-hand sales, such as bin sales of all kinds. And sadly, for a lot of our customers, suspending the distribution of dog bones and lollipops. And it sounds like a small thing, but it was one of those things that our operators really enjoyed providing, and our customers look forward to it too. But we simply couldn't take the risk, so that was also suspended. So one of the things that, so then we were kind of moving on to, okay, we think we've got a system in place. The public was still out and about doing their thing, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain the social distancing. Then on March 19th, we received word that the McNeil Wood Depot was closed indefinitely. And this caused a huge domino effect for our facilities when we realized that there really is no other location for leaf and yard and clean wood. So we began conversations with A&R to allow us to begin to redirect all leaf and yard and clean wood to Green Mountain Compost ahead of April 1, which is not a problem. April 1 is when by statute we were needing to accept leaf and yard debris at our certified facilities. So we did submit a waiver to that requirement so that we could direct everything to Green Mountain Compost. And again, this was still before we made the move to close the facilities. So we were still anticipating having all of the drop-off centers open at that point. But we were recognizing that we needed to consolidate some areas. And again, it's all about moving the material, and it's all about the, without having the backup of McNeil, that was going to put incredible pressure on our roll-off drivers to move leaf and yard out and all the compactor boxes and the roll-offs. So by sending all of that material straight to the end source anyway, that was going to be a relief for our folks. So we started to have some conversations too, or started to hear some questions from employees who are becoming concerned, saying, asking questions like, well, how sick do I need to be to call in? And we had always told our employees, if you're sick, you don't come to work. It doesn't matter. Call your supervisor and let us know so we can get a replacement in there, but don't come to work sick. But people are starting to get very concerned, and that said to me that some folks were worried that they would run out of sick time. So I did make the determination to refill all of our employees' sick bank up to their full allotment. And we did that as of March 23rd, just to remove that worry from them. And this was ahead of the federal 2-week, the COVID pay. That was, I think, a good decision as it turned out, because we had a very, very busy Saturday on March 21st. One of the things that we realized that we needed to do that we realized we wouldn't be able to reach every single person with our basic 3 messaging, because you just simply can't, right? You can try all kinds of media, all kinds of notification, but really the best way to talk and get the message out to people is to talk to them. So we implemented a system that we're calling line tenders. Basically, folks, this was a mix of admin folks, outreach and communication people, some compost people, before they were open on Saturdays. So compost folks and drop-off center folks who worked the lines while people were waiting to get up to the booth, and talk to them about the basic 3 and consolidating trips and alternative disposal locations, letting people know that the Myers location in Colchester was open and accepting bulky, that the Casella transfer station in Williston was open and accepting bigger loads, to make sure that everyone understood that they did have disposal options. So we talked to hundreds of people that day, our regular customers and then new customers. And then overnight, so that was March 21st, and on March 22nd and 23rd, that was when we found out that 2 separate employees that had worked on the 21st resided with people who were being either tested or had been asked to quarantine. So our employees were not symptomatic. I want to make that very clear. None of our employees were symptomatic, and none of our employees have tested positive. So all of our employees are healthy. All of our employees were healthy then, but they too, again, were residing with people who either were symptomatic and being advised to quarantine, or had been advised to get tested for underlying pre-existing conditions. So what that did was that immediately caused a ripple effect. And when we traced back several days before the Saturday, we realized that those employees plus another who, out of an abundance of caution, their doctor asked them to be tested, affected between 8 and 12 additional employees. So over in 4 different facilities. So that one 36-hour period completely upended our plan at the time. So doing the trace back, we realized we needed to ask 8 of our folks to self-quarantine, and another few were waiting on testing, again, out of their doctor's abundance of caution. So we knew that for the next 5 to 14 days, we would be severely understaffed, and that we would not be able to adequately, if at all, staff. We certainly could not staff all 6 of our facilities. We were struggling to create a schedule that would allow us to staff 3 facilities. So again, out of an abundance of caution, on that Monday, on the 23rd, was when we decided to close all the drop-off centers to do a deep clean. And, not only for, basically for peace of mind, right? And to make sure that, again, none of our employees were symptomatic, but we wanted to make sure that when we did come back to work, that every facility had been disinfected, just in case. So over that time, the 23rd and the 24th, we again were struggling with how do we properly staff, and we realized that this would probably not be the only time that we had this issue, and that was where we realized we needed to make a bigger change. And we went back and forth on the pros and cons. One of the things that was very concerning to me, and still is that one thing I did not want to do was to have any of our drop-off centers become a location of transmission. And we simply couldn't guarantee that that wouldn't happen with having all 6 open, or 4 or 5 or 3 or 2. The only way that we could have a strong sense of control over our situation and to not become a transmission vector was to focus on one location. And by focusing on the one location, what we were able to do was to arrange the Williston Drop-Off Center. And again, we selected that one due to the central location in the county. It has the longest queuing line, all of Redmond Road. It has the proximity to Green Mountain Compost. So we knew that people who were wanting to bring leaf and yard and organics could just make a quick right turn into GMC, drop off their organics, continue on to the drop-off center. And it allowed us to streamline the processes within the drop-off center. It allowed us to remove the temptation of additional bulky items or any other items that we were trying to discourage people from dropping off, and to make our process incredibly efficient. It also allowed us to install in the booth even more protective measures. We installed plexiglass shielding and a cash box. We stressed to our customers, you can write a check or have exact change. And it was with this check and exact change as well that we realized that even if we, continue to stress that by remaining open, we were still giving people a place to go and something to do. And we really needed to drive a behavior change, which was designed to help the public understand that we are open, but for essential activity. And we are essential workers, but bringing your trash and your recycling to a drop-off center a few times a week for something to do is not an essential activity. So we selected a flat fee, and we went back and forth on what that flat fee per visit should be. Should it be a flat fee per bag? Should it be a flat fee per visit? And we settled on a fee that was slightly higher than the average per trip fee, and that would be seen as a savings for customers should they combine their trips. And that's what we've seen. So for someone who is used to bringing us two small bags, $2.75 a week, by bringing their 4 bags every other week, they end up saving $1. And that's on the smallest size. So it was, again, designed to encourage people to reduce their trips down to just the essentials. And we have seen that happen. Once people did the math and realized that we weren't raising the fee on the bag, that it was a flat fee per trip, they understood and have worked very well with us. And there's still some confusion, so we're still putting line tenders out there and talking to customers again at a safe distance, helping people understand the whys. And our customers have adapted quite well, and they appreciate that we have spaced things out at Williston Drop-Off Center, that we are implementing the social distancing, that we are enforcing that. We are metering our vehicles through the center to allow just a few in at a time. We've implemented one-way traffic at the and exiting out the rear instead of doubling back, and making it very, very efficient. And so that has been going rather smoothly. And at Green Mountain Compost, we're seeing a significant uptick in activity. So we are adding additional line tending duties to Green Mountain Compost to help folks who have never gone there as a routine to understand the process. We have also made the decision with the environmental depot to close the depot for the month of April to all but truly emergency needs. And so residential calls coming in are being handled first by the hotline by our outreach and communication staff, and they are doing a sort of triage, and they are forwarding on to the depot manager anything that they are feeling is needing some attention, and the depot manager is managing that. He's also working with businesses to help them manage their needs. Businesses were managed by appointment regardless. So that is still being managed similar to the way it was. And we made the decision knowing that, for the depot, and that was a very difficult decision to make, because what we don't want to see happen is we absolutely do not want people to be putting this material into their trash, into their recycling, into their septic systems, pouring it out into the gutters. And so, stressing safe storage. And that's a lot of what our outreach and communication staff is doing as well when they receive calls. And when in talking to the depot manager, the depot supervisor, in the last 2 to 3 weeks of normal operations at the depot, he said there were 1 or maybe 2 residential customers who he felt really did need to come in out of the 75 to 80 customers that he managed. So a lot of people were just, again, taking advantage of the opportunity where they had a little bit of time to clean out their sheds, bringing us half full, containers of latex paint that, again, could wait. So what we're doing again with the depot staff is they are answering those phone calls and making the determination based on their years of experience. If there is an issue, there's an emergency, they are available to manage that. So we're confident that the needs of folks who may need to access the depot are being met. And again, GMC has been experiencing significant increase. Obviously, this is the time of year, leaf and yard and clean wood. We will be grinding on site, the clean wood on site very regularly, probably once a week for the next few weeks. GMC staff normally doesn't work on Saturdays until May, but they've been they'll be working on Saturdays in April. So we've expanded the hours there to help accommodate the leaf and yard and the clean wood. And for the MRF operations have continued uninterrupted. And again, as of my memo on the 5th, we were fully staffed, or the Casella was able to fully staff the Williston MRF. Josh is in regular communication with Casella about moving materials. They've expressed concern that possibly at some point in the future there may be some difficulty. We haven't experienced it yet. So we're continuing to accept recyclables, continuing to sort them at the MRF, continuing to send them out to market. That has not stopped. And again, our outreach and communications team has been continuing to work both with the public and with staff in making sure that everyone understands the whys behind some of the moves that we've made, and answering questions, helping people to understand how they can safely store things, how to prepare and make the most of their trips if they do need to come out to us, and certainly making the most of that. And they've been, monitoring social media, monitoring the hotline and info line, and it's been a lot of troubleshooting with people, and we've been getting some really good feedback from how our customers at the DOCs have adapted, and aside from their dogs, have been appreciative that we're open and appreciative of how smooth and efficient we have made the process. So those are the highlights of how we got to where we are today. We are, again, starting to see a bit of a pattern in the traffic flow. The weather is always a factor. If it's rainy, we're not going to see as much traffic. If it's not, we will. We are adequately staffed to manage both the DOC, given the additional people on the pad and the additional people in the line, and then additional support for Green Mountain Compost. And we're at a place where we are confident that we can continue to provide service under this scenario. I keep waiting for that next 24 or 36 hours when I get another call that three of our employees or four of our employees are being asked to quarantine or sent for test or told to self-isolate, and then we're down again. And the simple fact of the matter is it could happen overnight, and we just don't know. So I am loath to opening up any more facilities until we know that we are over the hump. And with the federal state of emergency through April 30th, I think I haven't paid attention to the governor today. I don't know if he announced another extension or if that's coming this week. That is my expectation, and my recommendation is that we maintain this level of service through April, and then continue to reevaluate. And we're always looking at, is there opportunity? Is there room? How are we feeling about it? But knowing that our staffing is secure at this level for these facilities. And Michelle, that is my overview and my update. Michelle, I am unmuting you, I believe. No, let me see here. Michelle, can you unmute yourself? Michelle DeVia?
Okay,
Ah, there she
there
is.
we go. Before I start going down the roll call, I want to acknowledge that Caitlin McCamp is on the line with us for Williston as the rep, since Jamie isn't here. So I'll start by asking Lee Perry. Lee, do you have any questions or comments you'd like to make to Sarah? And I'm not sure if you get to unmute yourself or if
Let me find.
or Sarah must.
I'm going to find you, Lee.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Sarah, I really appreciate how CSWD is handling this situation and really taking the employees' health and safety. It's paramount. Out of the 50 employees, how many essential employees do you have coming in to the various locations?
So the majority of the admin building staff is work from home. However, we do have some admin staff who are either filling in as doing line tending duties, who are either at the drop-off center or at Green Mountain Compost. So on any given day, let's see, we have all of our maintenance crew, our operations managers are also out on site, and at various points throughout the day, they rotate and float in and out to make sure that anything that's coming up is managed. So we have during the day on the pad right now, and that could change, is 4 full-time employees, 1 in the booth, 1 in the line. We have at the drop-off center. At Green Mountain Compost, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. So our operators are all on site. Our sales, we're handling sales remotely. And Dan goes back and forth between work from home and being on site. And then we have on a normal day, which we haven't actually had a normal day, we thought we would only need 1 line tender, but we really need 2. So then, and on Saturday, we will add a 3rd. And then on Saturday for the drop-off center, we'll add a 2nd line tender and have another person on the pad. So math, let's see, anywhere between 12 to 15 to 16.
Okay. Now I know
Not including, I'm sorry,
you-
not including the roll-up drivers. So about 20.
I know you said you re-upped everybody's sick time. One thing that we implemented to, there's some employees that'll, try to tough out if they got a little sniffle or something.
Yeah.
But we instituted check-in stations at our departments in public works with infrared thermometer and just a questionnaire, general, how are you feeling? If you have any of these symptoms, and, set a threshold for the temperature. And if they check a box on any one of those, they just go home for the day and until they feel better or call a doctor. It's just a way to help, flatten the curve, as they say.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately there are people that are like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That we have, I would say that probably describes most of our folks, right? Is that they're very proud of their service and they want to continue, they like to work. We have an awesome crew and generally very healthy. And we have certainly gotten that message across that if you are, and again, this is hard this time of year too, right? Because it's, allergy season. But if there's any question, we've told our folks, call your supervisor, call your doctor, do the triage with your doctor and let them decide, because you do have that full sick bank back, and we want you to be healthy, and we want the rest of our folks to be healthy, because it just is so viral. One thing I forgot to mention was that we also purchased masks, reusable and washable masks for all of our frontline folks. And those were being distributed yesterday and today. And everyone is being required to wear a face covering, which they all did Friday and Saturday before we got the masks in, and Monday before we got the masks in. And they all now have their own that they must wear as part of their uniform. So we've also supplied.
What about the roll-off drivers? Do they pretty much stay with the same vehicle, each driver?
They do. And we're also
Okay.
working on that with our equipment operators. As much as possible, that is the goal. And where it's not, whoever uses the equipment last is responsible for disinfecting that piece of equipment as they're exiting the equipment.
Yep. Great. Yeah, that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Abby Falk isn't on the line, so Tim Moran, do you have any questions for Sarah or any comments on this? And if you could unmute line 9807 for him.
I am looking for 9807. Hang on there, Tim. Where are we here? 9807. Oh, I gotta let you back in here. Okay, let's see. He had somehow slipped out to, okay. Tim Moran, you there?
Yes, I am. I lost power for a second and I had to redial.
Okay, sorry about that.
So do you have any comments for Sarah? Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but thank you, Sarah, for the update.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Okay. If you would unmute Alan Nye. So Alan, if you have any questions or comments for Sarah.
Hang on, I'm finding you, Alan. Okay, I think you're unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I have no questions. Michelle, a very good briefing, and I really appreciate you getting this meeting organized, Michelle.
Thank you. It took a bit, but I have to give the credit to Sarah and John Dorwit. All I did
Very
was
good.
follow their directions. So, but thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. So Doug Taff is on the line, and he's at 3066. If you want to unmute him so that he could ask or make a comment.
Yep. Doug, I think you're unmuted.
I think you did a great job under impossible situation, and that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next is Leslie. Leslie is at 4582.
Hang on there, Leslie. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sarah, kudos to you for managing an extremely challenging situation. Obviously, a condition none of us were quite prepared for. And I think you absolutely not merely rose to the challenge, but certainly exceeded any reasonable expectation in terms of performance. So thank you, and thank you to the staff of CSWD. I did want to ask if you have considered applying for the small business PPP loans that are available for to compensate for some, for economic loss of business by virtue of being able to show that you've retained your staff. If you haven't looked into that, I would urge you to do so forthwith.
Yeah,
This is a small business administration loan that's being administered by whatever bank you use.
yeah, yes, that's a good question. And I do need to do some more research because of our municipal status. I'm not entirely sure if we are eligible for some of the relief. I know we're not eligible for some of the federal programs, but we will be looking into wherever we can recoup, we will. We are separately tracking COVID specific expenses in the hopes of being able to submit through FEMA. I know that is not a quick reimbursement, and nor is it guaranteed. But we are keeping those expenses, both personnel expenses, are being kept tracked separately from general purchases that we need that are made directly specific to COVID. So we are tracking that, and I will look into loans. Right now, our cash position, again, because this hit in the fourth quarter of our fiscal year, we are still fine. We are able to pay our bills. We're able to pay our payroll, and we will be evaluating the month of April. We're looking at obviously our cash flow is significantly lower for the first few weeks of this fourth quarter, but we were steady through March. It's really April 1 that kicked off some where we need to be keeping an eye on things. But compost continues to be sold. We continue to move material to the commodities market through the MRF. We've actually seen an a slight uptick in cardboard pricing. So that's some good news. We obviously are seeing a significant decrease in trash tonnage, and we will also be seeing a decrease in the solid waste management fee. So we may want to work with our haulers on that, and that's something that I'm still working through a recommendation that I want to bring to the board regarding some possible relief there. But through the third quarter, we're good, and we do have cash in our sweep account that if we needed to backfill to continue to ensure that we're paying our necessary bills, such as our the health insurance premiums and our payroll, we do have the ability there.
Any other questions, Leslie?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Logan Haig, and he's at 6621.
6621.
He's also on the computer and unmuted. So.
Oh, okay.
Nope, just a thank you to Sarah and the staff for keeping everything afloat for our community. We really appreciate it, and no further questions for me.
Thank you, Logan. Tim Laux, 8872.
8872, stand by, Tim. I'll find you, 8872. Tim, you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So two questions. And so have we had any confirmed or suspected cases to this point?
In our staff?
Yes.
There have been no confirmed cases.
Okay. And that is good news, obviously.
Yes.
The next question. So obviously salaried employees are almost, with very few exceptions, are working from home. And I'm assuming that some of those folks are redeploying to be the line tenders. And in fact, I saw Michelle last weekend, I believe.
Correct.
For our hourly associates, do we have hourly associates that are not at work that are being paid right now?
That are not at work that are being paid right now. Everyone is, if you're the only ones who would be not at work and being paid are those who previously were already on either short-term disability, long-term disability, had an either an intermittent FMLA or FMLA arrangement. I'm gonna have to look back to see, I believe we have 1 or 2 who are using paid time off and to care. So they were using paid time off before the federal COVID bank came in because they had childcare concerns. So they are now going to fall under the federal guidelines for the Families First bank of 80 hours. But as far as people who are just being paid to stay home, no. However, we are looking at, just like the airport does, they have a reduced work schedule, and 80% on, 20% off. So we are looking at that.
Got it. Do we have any, I know we don't, this is really difficult. I know that, the business, that I'm working for, we're thinking about how we are going to restart, even though we know that we don't have a date circled on the calendar for when we can restart. And I guess I just would throw that out as a suggestion, is to let's start thinking about what a return to normalcy looks like. But thank you for the update. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so when we were looking at, before we had the overnight hit of down 8 to 12 employees, we had a tiered response as far as closure. So we knew which facilities would be closed in which order, right? So we knew we weren't going to be opening Heinsberg just because it hadn't opened yet, so it didn't make sense to go forward at that point. We also looked at, and actually I had called Commissioner Perry and Commissioner Haig to say, hey, guys, we're probably not going to reopen Burlington and Richmond after we came back off of the deep clean, just because it was, Burlington is difficult to manage due to the scale, and it's hard, people come in the back gate, logistical concerns. And Richmond, it's such a short queue that it backs up very easily onto the main road. So we knew that those would be the first tier, those 3. And then we went down to the next tier, which was going to be, if we had to close due to, again, staffing, Milton and South Burlington. Milton, due to it's the furthest amount away, and just, again, materials management, materials movement, and collection, it takes the longest to do that for our guys going back and forth to Milton. And South Burlington, similarly, with the backup onto Patchen Road, it happens every Saturday. And so with the 2 drop-off centers having the longest queue, Williston and Essex, they would be, Essex would then be the next one if we had to, and then Williston would only close if the governor told us to. And that's, we wouldn't, right? So, well, we would if he told us to. But that would be the last one to go. So, go in reverse order, right? So that would be how we would look at reopening potentially, is, okay, who's got the most capacity as far as queuing and space, and then go from there. So that would, in a nutshell, that was the plan.
Thank you, Tim. The next is Paul Stabler. I believe Paul called in on his cell phone, and I don't know if you have his cell phone number.
6134. Let me find 6134. Paula, is that you?
Yeah, that's me. Thank you. I would say I have a question and a comment. Just again, I can't echo how grateful I am to Sarah and all of staff for the excellent response you guys have done, and Sarah, it's great leadership on your part, so thank you. I do have a question. It appears that A&R is considering allowing the haulers to stop collecting recyclables, which I would think could lead to a big increase at our one remaining drop-off center. So I'm just wondering if there's thoughts about how to handle that. And then I see that they're also, considering postponing the, organics collection by a year or two. So maybe that's for a different part of the agenda, but I wanted to ask that.
Yeah, no, I am happy to chime in, and I think perhaps Jen Holiday is on the line as well. So I will unmute Jen, and Jen, you can correct me wherever I get things wrong. So regarding, I'm going to start with the food scrap ban first. So the food scrap ban delay that's being proposed, unless it has changed, Jen, and you can again correct it, was to January of next year. And, we are ready to accept material. We are accepting material. We are making compost. We are selling compost. We're good to go. We have the capacity. We have seen a drop off, obviously. So, once the schools stopped, then there was a big component. Certainly UVM was a major producer that we are no longer seeing. But we are seeing a lot of material coming through still. So we are planning to move forward, albeit perhaps a little bit more slowly over the course of the next 4 to 5 months. And that we will be talking with you as a board again about how those plans have evolved, but they really haven't changed too much. It just gives us a little bit more time to work on some of the fine details. But we are still progressing and moving forward on full implementation of the ban. Jen, did you have anything to augment, or was there anything new that came out of the discussions in the House this week about the ban?
The only thing that I would say is that in the conversation, so we came out in opposition of that proposal, and those that were in favor of it that testified were consistently requesting that food scrap ban be pushed out longer than January 15th, 2021. They were asking for it to go to, for a full year to July 1st, 2021. So if it does get changed, it could potentially be pushed out for another year.
Okay, thank you. And then on the recycling, that one is a bit of a mystery, quite frankly. So we, again, Paul, you're exactly right, is that if haulers do stop collecting recyclables, or if they, are putting them all into the same truck with the trash, I don't see our customers wanting that to happen. So I would, as you're getting at, I would foresee that our customers would hold back their recycling and then want to bring their recycling to the drop-off center. And because it is $10 per trip, no matter what you're bringing, I would think that they might want to bring their trash too. So it feels a little counterintuitive, because I can see that if perhaps customers would not want to continue with curbside service in that instance, or for however long it might be. And again, materials are moving, and we are at this point staffed. It doesn't mean, again, that same thing, that the MRFs couldn't see overnight having their staff be decimated. If for some reason the staffing at the MRF in Williston goes down, there's a potential to move material to Rutland. If both of those MRFs go down, there's the potential to move material to Charlestown, Mass, to Casella's larger facility there. And it does get down to transportation. You know, that really is the linchpin in everybody's plan, is the drivers. And so from the perspective of curbside, we've actually been reminding people that curbside is a great option if you have access to it, and everyone in Chittenden County pretty much does. It might be a little trickier for some folks to get the bins down to the end of the road, but there is great access to curbside collection in Chittenden County, and it is, you know, very hands-off, and as far as the social distancing, nothing more distancing than putting a cart at the end of the driveway around the curb, and then having an automated truck collect that cart. So we have heard from some of our haulers that they have picked up quite a few customers for convenience sake.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have heard that. We've also seen, well, some of the larger haulers have certainly seen their food scrap customers, you know, dry up quite a bit. The smaller niche food scrap collectors have seen steady service and some growth as well. So as far as the recycling, we're just not seeing it. And again, we came out in opposition to those components as well, and we don't see this as COVID related, as far as a need to dispose of recycling in the landfill. Jen, can you maybe speak a little bit more to that?
Well, the proposals were there's two related to recycling. One was to allow, if it were enacted, would immediately give permission for haulers not to pick up recycling. And then the second one granted authority to the secretary to allow landfilling of recyclables. And this really has been come out of the Northeast Kingdom, where they've had situations where some of the towns have stopped their transfer station collections, and haulers are seeing an uptick of recycling at the curb, and they have to drive it down to Chittenden Murph, and it's expensive, whereas the towns were accepting it for free. So it's really a localized issue, and as Sarah pointed out, we're just not, it's really everything is moving in terms of recycling. And even if there was a pause where, say, haulers couldn't pick it up because they lacked the staff to pick up trash and recycling, we feel that recycling people can hold on for just a little bit before it really becomes problematic. But we did point that out to the legislature in my testimony, Paul, exactly what you had said, which is our biggest fear with any of that, if this were to be enacted, is that it would drive people to us for the recycling. That, and it would also do really irreversible harm in terms of the message to people about, in Chittenden County, all the education that we've put out there about recycling, the 28 years or so that we've been pushing people to recycle it. It really would do a lot of damage to that message. So hopefully.
Jen, do you have any idea when an action actually might be taken on that, a decision?
Yeah, they're taking it up again tomorrow with the Department of Health. And I think in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
All
right, thank you.
Yes, it was It was in the Senate last week, and the agency was opposed to any of changes to Act 148 at that time. And then this week, they actually came out with these proposals in the House. So they really completely changed direction.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you for addressing that, both of you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Paul. Next is Paul Roos, 7730. If you would unmute that.
Hang on there, Paul. Let me find you. Okay, Paul, I think you're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. My questions on staffing and finances were more than adequately addressed in previous questions, so I have nothing else. But a lot of thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Next is Kaylin McCamp, and she's at 2211.
2211. Hang on, Kaylin. I'll find you. 2211. Pardon me. Michelle, are you seeing Kaylin? 2211.
I thought I did, unless she left. She was on earlier.
Okay.
I don't see her now.
Okay.
All right. So then next is Bryn, and that is 8643.
She's 8543. I had a typo on there. 85. Okay. Bryn, can you hear us?
Yep, I'm here. Yeah, significant, echoing everybody else, significant thanks to you and the team and everybody for just being very responsive and active amongst all the very quick changes and doing it very thoughtfully and diligently. So many thanks for your leadership and for the responsiveness of the team for all of that. I think I've got a couple buckets of questions I could definitely elaborate on later. One is equitability of access, thinking about increases in unemployment and how we are considering providing any opportunities of financial support or looking to the state to offer any opportunities of financial support to ensure materials are managed in healthy and safe manner as it relates to sanitation and healthy living conditions. I was wondering if there was any consideration of similar to what grocery stores are doing for hours of access for elderly. That may or may not be feasible, but was just something that I thought about. And next area kind of bucket goes into planning future, just along what Tim was mentioning is just future planning related to like as things get restarted, just thinking about all of the potential aspects that may have a ripple effect, increased materials that people have been stocking up that then they, bum rush to get out the house, potential dumping increases, and then just as it goes into other things like just strengthening. It sounds like you've already done some of this in terms of staff skills matrix and prioritizing cross-training areas to shore up any weak links there. And then, thinking also about like the efficiencies that you've put in place and ability to maintain those moving forward, or what other priority actions might be taken as things open up for immediate improvements to infrastructure or operational changes. And then that last piece of conversation that relating to potential legislative changes, it seems like some of the impetus for making changes to recycling may be argued about markets, but that doesn't seem to be an issue as of yet. And then as it relates to potential hazards for exposure to germs, it seems like that could be resolved with instituting totes on a greater basis and a more widespread basis. I know that there still is high and heavy use of the blue bins, and I see that if totes were applied, then they would be managed in a similar way to trash totes, and that would reduce some of the argument there, but also resolve potentially some of the reasons why we are still working to increase our recycling rates when the container sizes are not similar to what the trash tote container size collection sizes are. I am curious about the Jen or Sarah maybe can speak to the why a little bit more detail about the NEK facility closures and why if they are on reduced operations or if they have kind of flat out closed. I'm just not sure the details about CSWD being an essential service and maintaining some open facilities, and not sure how that is aligning with the requirements for NEK's facilities. So, just a few things.
Jen, yeah, I've unmuted you. So if you had anything to add for that.
I don't know a lot of detail, Brian, about NEK, but I do know Paul Tomasi was testifying. He's the executive director of the Northeast Kingdom Solid Waste District. He mentioned a lot the way that the NEK operates. They have 49 member towns in the Northeast Kingdom Solid Waste District. It's huge in terms of the number of towns and then the greatest area. And they're in partnership with a lot of their municipalities that provide the service, and then the NEK will go and pick up at their transfer stations, their recyclables, for example, or other special waste. So it's a different kind of arrangement. And I think for some of these towns, I don't know the answer in terms of the necessity question and why they shut down. I can't answer that, but they have lost some. And I think people are using other transfer stations, but then they're also going to some of these transfer stations were offering recycling only and not trash, and they were taking the recycling for free, and that was being subsidized through NEK with the solid waste management fee. And then the customers would put their trash out at the curb, and now they're doing both, and that's where the problem has stemmed from. I don't know why the facilities have closed down though.
Thank you.
Anything else, Bryn?
I was looking to Sarah for any of the content related to equitability of access.
Yeah, and that has been a topic that I've talked with a couple of the either town administrators or town managers and some folks in public works, particularly in Milton and in Burlington and Richmond, to see if there's something that we could help them with regarding, say, a fast trash service or a bag drop service. And I know that Milton was looking into it, and for Milton, it was, I think, easier for their folks to go to Myers and Colchester. But they were the only community that was, I think, actively looking into it, because one of the things that we had said we could probably do would be to release some of the funds from the community cleanup fund for each particular community if they wanted to use that to do some kind of a supplemental bag drop or fast trash service. So that may have been an option, but I did not hear back from any of the communities beyond kind of some initial, oh, and I had sent that, I think, over to Colchester as well, beyond some initial conversations with them. But so that was one idea that we had had, and a way to, also help some of the haulers who may have lost some of their commercial service to at least be able to say, okay, on this Saturday, on, between 8 and 11, we will have a bag drop. And then it will be up to the haulers, again, for pricing and et cetera, just the way it's done in other parts of the state. So that was one item that we had discussed, but didn't get too far. And as regarding, we have talked with the few of the communities who have the closed drop-off centers regarding illegal dumping, and we are making routine checks around at the drop-off centers. We are asking the public works departments in those locations to keep us up to date on any incidents that they may see, because we want to make sure that we're addressing that and monitoring that as well. And regarding maintaining efficiencies going forward, one of the things I'll do with the board is when we're kind of over this part of it and have resumed a somewhat normalized, whatever the new normal will be, system, to have a debriefing, a lessons learned, an opportunities realized session at one of the board meetings, probably in August, when we will be able to take a little bit of a look backward, because we are absolutely learning an awful lot, as you can imagine. And we will be, there are absolutely some efficiencies that we can carry forward without a doubt. So we'll be bringing those lessons back as well for conversation.
Thanks, Sarah and Jen.
Thanks, Brad.
To expedite this, Sarah or John, could you unmute everyone for a moment so that they can let me know if there are any of the commissioners, and commissioners only, who have would like to ask you another question or have another comment based on what they just heard. Would any of the commissioners please speak up if you'd like to get online again? I'm hearing no one, so if you could mute them again, and we'll move on here with the agenda.
And hang on, Michelle, I may have also muted you, so I'm going to unmute you. Okay, there you go.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't know what point you muted me at.
You're good. That's fine. Nothing important.
Okay, so I would like to move on to the next agenda item then, which is going to be the budget discussion and an update on it.
Right. So we clearly need to get back to the budget process. And we were about 3/4 of the way through when we suspended. And actually, where is, I want to make sure I've got Leslie on here too, 4582. Michelle, if you don't mind, I'm going to find Leslie and unmute Leslie as the finance chair. Okay.
Absolutely.
So we were about 3/4 of the way through with the finance committee, and when we had suspended the last meeting. So what I've asked managers to do is to go back and take a new fresh look at their budgets, and to make changes. So as far as, any projects that maybe were hopeful we're going to be done, but we really don't think we're going to do. We need to cut. Where I'm looking at all of the travel budgets, looking at anything that could be seen as, um, uh, you know, nice to have, and just really examining, knowing that we're going to have to take a very hard look at the inbound tonnage for the solid waste management fee, and just expect that what our projections may have been will not be. So we're anticipating that the solid waste management fee tons will certainly be lower next year, due to what will be an anticipated time of recession. So I'm going to work with John and Nancy on trying to estimate what that reduction will be. We have also taken a hard look at the capital budget, which the Finance Committee had not yet seen, but Josh Tyler and I reviewed that the other day, and we have identified some projects and expenditures that we do not need to do in fiscal 21 and move them either to 22 or further out. So we need to, I think, have a rerun through some of these budgets. And what I will ask the managers to do is to present a short memo with their changes and their reductions to the Finance Committee. So we'll need to reestablish that Finance Committee schedule. Realistically, I don't think we will get the budget to you until May. And it may be that we need to have to meet, instead of meeting once every 4 weeks, maybe we can meet once every 3 to squeeze an extra meeting in as a full board, so that we could have a hope of the board approving the budget to go to the member towns by the 2nd to 3rd week of May. And that may be also wishful thinking, but that could be the goal. The charter does say that I then have 45 days, the district does, to get the approval of all the member communities. And that doesn't leave a whole lot of time, because there's not 45 days in June, as we all know. So we most likely would be able to receive 10 approvals, and that is, we need a simple majority, and it's not by weight, it's by 1 vote per community to approve the budget. So I would need 10 communities to approve adoption in order for the budget to be adopted on and effective as of July 1. If for some reason we do not receive 10 approvals in June, then we would continue to operate as a district on July 1 or 2, July 1, under June 30's budget. So we would not stop, we would not cease, we would not shut down, we would just not be operating under the new budget. It would be under the old budget. So my thought is to pull together a proposed schedule. I'm not sure if Amy had that in the packet. I'd have to review as a handout.
No, she didn't.
Okay, so I will pull together I'll work with the Finance Committee, with Leslie and Tim and Brian, and copying you, Michelle, and saying, okay, what makes sense for us to reconvene as a Finance Committee to review the last couple of budgets that you had not seen, and then to come back again with a roll-up and any changes that the managers have made, and then get the full budget to the board in May.
Okay.
So I have a couple of questions about your thinking.
Yep, go ahead.
So when you're talking about the sections of the budget that we have not yet considered, are you expecting whoever is responsible for presenting those budgets to do a revision, just like you're asking all the managers to do, in light of possible economic changes? And I want to speak to that in a moment.
Yeah.
But first I want to understand, you know, if there, the sections that we've not yet looked at, I don't see a reason to have to go over them twice.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So that's that.
Yep.
The next thing I would say is, I'm sorry to have to do this. I put on my economist hat. It is not unlikely that this country and Vermont will face an economic contraction considerably worse than 2008. And by hurrying up the budget and trying to hold to the schedule with a budget presented to the board in mid-May, I am concerned that we might be jumping the gun too fast before we can see some indicators as to what the scale of economic contraction is likely to be. Particularly with Vermont's economy being based on small businesses and an enormous number of self-employed people, the impacts could be really quite disturbing. And I feel that by mid-May, we won't have enough information to make a sound judgment. And I would much rather continue with the current budget for a month while we get better indicators of what the economic impacts of this of this shutdown is really going to be. Something more than we're likely to have by mid-May. That's one observation. The second thing I would say is it would be very helpful if there were someone on staff who could go back to 2008, 2009 and take a look at the impact on CSWD operations just as a benchmark. You know, I would rather be prepared and informed than not. And then the third thing I want to have a look at, I don't know whether you've yet received the consultant's pay review that we had been waiting to see. If so, I think that should be distributed to the committee because that also could inform and it should be distributed to the managers as well. It could inform revisions to the draft budgets that have been presented so far. So that's just a few quickie observations and concerns.
Sure, thank you. And to the last point, no, we have not received the report yet. That work has not been completed. And we knew that it would not be completed in time for the fiscal 21 budget. So we don't have that report yet. We can absolutely have some folks do some analysis and research into the 08-09 budgets and the actuals. So I will put some staff onto that this week. That's a great idea. And
thank you for that. I know they've got I know they have so much spare time right now.
Well, we're fortunate that we have some very, very brave people who have had a few projects that have you know, are now in limbo. But I'm going to ask Nancy and John Dorwart to start that research, and you know, Nancy is excellent. So
great, thank you very much for
that's a great suggestion. And regarding, you know, not knowing the extent of the contraction, you're absolutely right. And keep in mind too, remember that we haven't had to do a true budget recast in quite some time, but we could. And my only concern with operating under the current budget for too long is that the budget that I would be recommending for 21 will be lower than the budget that we're currently operating under. So we could certainly do a budget recast in our second quarter if we needed to.
Okay,
So we do have some.
that'll work.
Yeah.
But again, if we can do this research on 2008-9 and then share that with the managers that you're asking to redo their budgets, I think that would be very informative for them and help them come up with something that would prepare us well for what, unfortunately, I hate to say, looks like it lies ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Can do. It's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you, Leslie. Those were very insightful observations. Yikes. So we'll unless there are any other commissioners who'd like to hit the raise my hand button on their screen if they're on it, I think that we'll move on and go to the Burlington dock, the lease extension. Yep. So I think we might want to unmute Lee.
Yes, let me find Lee. 756. Okay, Lee, I think you are unmuted.
I am unmuted. Thank you.
Great. So yes, so this is one of those things that I think both Lee and I had on our to-do list last summer, and both of us let it fall down our to-do list, and Lee remembered and brought it back. So thank you to Lee for doing that. And so the last time that we had executed a short-term lease for the Burlington Drop-Off Center on Pine Street was for 3 years. And this time, Lee, I think you're looking at 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. So the 2 years would roughly coincide with the current MOU and would allow for, if the board wants to extend the current MOU for its second 1-year period. So this would then go in tandem with that.
Correct.
Sarah, can you unmute all so that we have any comments that any commissioners want to make?
Unmuted.
Do any commissioners have any comments, observations, concerns? Hearing none, there's a resolution at the bottom of that section, that memorandum. Would a commissioner like to move that?
Michelle, I can read let me read the resolution into the recording record.
Please, yes.
So the resolution is, be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners authorizes the Executive Director to execute a 2-year extension to the MOU regarding lease of the property at 339 Pine Street, Burlington, for the purposes of operating a drop-off center for the period July 1, 2019 through June 30, 2021.
Do we have
So moved, Leslie.
Leslie has moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Alan.
Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? In that case, all commissioners in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? The motion is passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you could leave the lines unmuted, I'd like to ask if there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment. And I'd like to preface that by saying that please keep a comment to 1 minute or so. Sarah may want to respond or not, but it's not going to be an opportunity for a debate. So are there any members of the public who would like to make a comment or an observation? No one? Hearing none. I'd like to ask if there's any other business to be brought to this meeting.
I have none.
Hearing none, then I'd like a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Alan, I move to adjourn.
A second?
Paul Stabler.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? This meeting is over. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle.
So long.
Bye,
Thank you.
So long. Thank you, Michelle.
Everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sarah?
Yes,
Hi, how are you?
good. Who's this, please?
It's Thomas Maloney.
Oh, hi, Thomas. Did not recognize your voice. And I'm going,
I was just on listening in on the call.
gotcha.
So, I don't know why it just it kind of rang back. I was just hanging up. I did hear Commissioner Nolte's comment, and I looked. I think that the program she was discussing, the paycheck protection, I don't think that's available for.
I don't think it is either. Amy looked into it, and it because we're municipal, I don't think we have access to it. So
Yeah, it's a small business. Not certain nonprofits can fit,
Right.
but you're not the district's not a nonprofit, it's a municipality. The state is expecting to get all the states are getting allocation for municipal and governmental services, and I don't know how the state has yet decided how to divvy that up or how they're going to handle it. I'm sure the district can be a good sort of should be on the high list, but you're going to have Rutland, Burlington, all the bigger
for sure.
city towns that are going to be really clamoring for for the money.
No, absolutely.
As well as the state.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think we're eligible. But that's okay. Okay, well, good.
Yeah.
So we'll talk.
Good. All right, we'll talk tomorrow too.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Thomas.
Excellent. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye.
Bye, everyone. I'll be ending the meeting. Thank you.
Night.
Night.